In a world of increasing mental health challenges, psychology and faith can both provide tools for healing and wellness. This is the idea behind Journey on My Mind. Each episode, our panel of pastors and therapists sit down together to share their experiences and insights on the modern world's mental health issues: depression, loneliness, aging, addiction, and so much more. Join us now as we explore what it means to thrive at the complex intersection of spirit and psychology.
Welcome to another Journey on My Mind. We have gathered with three white guys to discuss...
You among them.
Yes.
Yeah.
And Edwin.
Yeah.
To continue our conversations around this idea of how and where psychology and spiritual development interact and intersect and complement one another, and sometimes go in opposite directions. But let's have a conversation today around something a little more interesting.
A little more interesting than what we've previously
Than what
talked
we
about.
normally do.
The other stuff, don't
Doesn't
listen
count.
to it.
Forget
I
that.
want to
This
know
one, this is a good one.
What is your favorite thing about fall?
Oh,
That's
'Cause-
the interesting thing.
Yeah, because it is for a while. We've been waiting for
Yeah.
fall to arrive.
Yes.
I know it is November, whatever, and in the 20s.
yes.
So, and we Dave, we just looked at each other and said, well, it took till November 20, whatever it is, to get at least a cool day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I personally love the leaves changing and going for a drive in the country around here. And because there are a lot of roads that are just like, hey, this is nice. Put
Yeah.
top down and go for a drive. It's one
Yeah.
of my favorite things to do. When it's like about 45 out, wear a hat,
In
Turn
your
the-
convertible?
turn the heat on, and look at the beauty of the day.
Yeah. Well,
awesome.
you know, if you put that hood up, you probably don't need the heat.
Oh,
But it's way more fun. the
it's
other
way more
right?
fun. You
Okay,
can
fair
see
enough.
you can see the brilliance of the leaves better with the
Yeah.
top down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fair.
Yeah.
True. Fall's my favorite season, period.
Okay.
Like everything about it.
Well, here it's only like 2 days.
I know. Well, Indiana, where I grew up, it's the
3
most
days.
beautiful time of year. No, it's actually, you got a full season of it.
Okay.
And especially you go down southern Indiana, where it's like a little more hilly,
Yeah.
Brown County area, like the leaves it's one of the most beautiful places I've ever seen in the fall.
Wow.
But also, I was sharing with somebody on Sunday that this question, like, what do I love about fall? It's like where all the things in my life, like all the great moments in life, I feel like have happened kind of
fall.
at some point in the fall.
No
Yeah.
kidding.
So it's just like the time of year that I'm like, okay, what awesome thing's going to happen this year? You know? So I don't know why. I just,
All your kids born in the fall?
No,
Okay, yeah.
but most awesome things. But like Angie
Good
and I,
reason.
we started dating November 14th, 1991, right?
Whoa.
So it's things like that, like
Yeah.
those marker moments that,
Sure.
yeah,
Yeah.
just a lot of good memories.
Yeah, it is the best thing that happened to you.
That's for sure
Yeah.
true. Anybody that knows me knows that.
Yeah.
So-
Yeah. Well, that's good. How about you?
My
Favorite?
favorite part of the year is in the fall, Thanksgiving.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes.
You're a Thanksgiving lover.
Well, we have a house in the mountains. It
That's
was
true. You do.
Ellen's childhood home that
Yeah.
she renovated, has 8 bedrooms. Then her mother-in-law lives on another property that has an additional 3 bedrooms. So this year, which is a standard year, we have about 23 people
Wow.
coming.
That's right.
So it's my family, it's my brother's family, it's another set of family friends.
My other brother,
My
Daryl.
other brother Daryl's family.
Yeah.
And so we're all in this big house in the mountains of North Carolina.
Awesome.
In the fall, it's got a little nip
Oh,
to it,
man.
and super duper fun.
And
it's
it
my
didn't get-
favorite part of the whole
How
year.
long do you stay? Like a week or
we
is it a
we
few
go
days?
from as early as Tuesday through Sunday.
Okay,
but usually
nice.
Wednesday to Sunday.
Good few days.
And this year, my niece and her husband, who live in Cabo, Mexico,
Ooh.
are in town, and they're going to be there, and I'm super happy about them. The story with them was I officiated their wedding, and I also was the magician for the reception.
That's awesome.
I remember this. And something got lost in the desert.
No, we were in the desert. We were on an oasis in the desert. Not
That's right.
like
Yeah.
in a
Yeah,
deserty
yeah.
area.
I
We were
remember this.
in the desert.
It's
Wow.
so good.
And you could hear tigers lolling, kind of roaring over the hill, kind of.
Unique.
Because they were on a drug cartel's
Oh,
property
Okay,
over the
alright.
hill there.
Yeah.
So if that gives you any idea
Yeah.
of the setting.
You get
Wow.
out, Dave.
And
you do
the-
get out.
The woman who was responsible for decorations
Yeah.
got like kind of an informal Uber.
Oh.
And the guy saw her put all this silvery stuff in the trunk.
Oh no!
And he kidnapped her.
Oh, that's it. That's what happened. I remember this now. That's
He
right.
kidnapped her, took her out to the middle of the desert, dropped her in the middle of the desert, and took off with all her stuff.
So never get an informal Uber
Informal.
in the middle of nowhere
in La Paz,
and
Mexico.
show them
Okay,
and
all right.
show them all your silver.
Yeah. Wow.
Good to know.
Yeah. Oh, the story.
Lessons learned.
That's a whole.
Yeah, there's
I mean, there's
so
an
many good
hour
ones.
plus of
Sounds like
content.
a movie.
Okay,
It
just
does. It's
just,
like the Hangover
That's
Part
what
4.
I literally was going
What
to
it
say. It
is.
sounds like something from The Hangover.
It is. It's so crazy.
That's
The whole
hilarious.
thing
I don't know
is
what you
crazy.
guys are talking about.
Oh,
Never
yeah,
seen
Kevin,
them. Never.
yeah.
I've never.
Would not partake.
No. Hey, just curiosity's sake, for the two people that are still listening, is your property untouched by the floods?
No, it was. So there's one entrance to the house, and it was completely underwater.
Wow.
And so the houses are up on a hill enough that the houses didn't get flood damage, but the roads did.
Wow.
So the road that goes up to the higher elevated house actually had erosion under it, and part of the road collapsed.
Wow.
Okay.
So they've had to repair that.
Okay.
And
So it washed out that
it
whole
washed
section.
it out.
Wow.
Yeah, it was. I could show you pictures, but there is a bridge that leads to the house, and there are reflectors on the sides of the bridge.
Yeah.
And you can see about half a foot of the reflector, which would be about maybe 6 feet in the air.
Wow.
Something like that.
That were
Dang.
underwater.
Underwater. Yeah.
Wow.
The whole thing. All you could see are these little tops of the reflectors peeking out, which is that's
It's
how
really
deep
for
the water
snow.
is.
Now,
It's
everything-
not for water.
Yeah. All the water's gone now, though, right? It's receded.
Yeah,
or is
yeah,
it
there's
still,
no
It's just the
flooding there.
damage that's left.
And we got married in Asheville. Ellen lived in Asheville for 5 years, and Asheville's just destroyed.
Destroyed, yeah.
The saddest thing because
Yeah.
whole parts of Asheville, like the River Arts District, was completely destroyed.
Yeah.
Biltmore Village, all that.
Yeah,
So
It's kind of like what happened to New Orleans with Katrina.
yeah, it is
Similar. It's a similar thing.
It is very similar. Yeah,
Like
it's-
that
it'll
level
be
of
years,
destruction, yeah.
years and years
A
of
huge
repair.
rebuild.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
So thank you
Really
for asking.
sad.
But
Yeah.
their houses are fine. They're now the roads are accessible, but
That's
they
good.
didn't get away unscathed,
Okay.
and the county sure did not.
right.
Yeah.
So you're going to bring your food with you.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. Wow, man.
Well.
Well, somehow we got there.
Yeah. Yeah.
From
Question of the
the
fall.
fall.
yeah. I just. But that
Shows how focused we are.
there is. But it was a worthy question
Yeah,
because
that
in the back
matters.
of my mind I was like, I don't remember if you told me how much damage was done. But anyway, I'm sure just like in those moments of great trauma, there's some therapy that's going on there in North Carolina around that flood.
Yeah, one of my psychologists who used to work at our practice in Charlotte, North Carolina, has actually gone to that county because her family is from that county, coincidentally, really, and has offered a series of supports for first responders and for other people in the county at some of the local churches there.
Yeah.
So
That's awesome.
That's great.
There's some good stuff happening there.
Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah.
That's good.
Wow.
Well, today we've kind of decided that we would wade into this idea. There was a book recently written called Bad Therapy.
Yeah.
And Dave, if you could give us kind of the preface or the
The setup.
setup for that, that'd be great.
So there was a book called Bad Therapy by a woman named Abigail Schreier, and she's a bit of a bomb thrower as a journalist. Like
Okay.
she loves being provocative, and so she's put this book out there. And the premise is that we've, particularly with parenting and child rearing, we have allowed this therapeutic culture to become overriding of normal parenting processes and normal adolescent and child development to a point where it's become a bad thing. And so it's gotten a lot of traction. There are a lot of moms in neighborhoods that are reading it together. There are a lot of people talking about it online. So definitely something we want to talk about today. It's got a pretty harsh critique of therapy and therapeutic culture.
Okay.
So that's the windup.
That's the windup. Was the book written as a response to anything other than therapy, or did somebody else? Was she prompted in some way, or is this her?
I think she was reflecting on where the culture is and seeing some of the movements that are happening in parenting, and seeing the influence that kind of this therapeutic mindset has had, and really beginning to look at, is this good for us? Is this a destructive thing? Is it something that brings us to health and all that?
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's more of a cultural counterpoint rather than a response to a specific idea or a...
Well, I would say it's a response to several ideas.
Okay.
in there, right. So I can jump into one of them.
Yeah.
Okay, let's do that.
For example, one of the big critiques that she has is that therapy and therapists and people in mental health have contributed to this movement of gentle parenting, which she argues is actually detrimental to kids because it doesn't move parents towards setting good limits and having good boundaries. And it's all about how does the kid feel and responding with all this sort of gentleness and not allowing parents the freedom to say, you got to set this limit and knock it off.
Right.
Okay.
And so, and we see that, right? I was in the airport, and this kid who was probably 4 was hitting his mother in the head. Like he was getting worked up about wanting something that he saw in one of the stores.
Sure.
And he's sitting there just hitting her in the head. And she's like, Mommy doesn't want you to hit me. Mommy wants that, you're feeling angry right now. You're all these things, like naming the feeling and saying what Mommy wants, all this. And we're just looking at this like, you've got to be kidding.
Yeah, right.
So we see enough of those kinds of things. That's an exaggerated.
Right.
But
I don't know that it's really.
But we've all seen it.
Yeah, totally.
And we see parents let their kids. I was in a restaurant.
Did you offer to help them out?
I did not. No. I was like off duty.
Boy, I gotta fly.
Yeah. But I was in a restaurant, and these kids were just terrorizing the entire restaurant. They're running around, screaming, grabbing things, and the parents are just standing there. Yeah. And I'm like, this is insane.
Yeah.
So I think that's
what they're talking about.
Yeah, when we're talking about
response to that kind of thing.
That kind of thing that we're seeing, and then what that does in terms of parenting regarding limit setting, boundary making.
Just out of curiosity, were either of you parented by gentle parents?
No.
Not at all.
No.
No.
Okay, I just clicked.
No. How about you?
No. I would be. Is there another end of the spectrum?
Oh yeah.
That would be other. It would be
harsh.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. I think I'm in that camp.
There you go. Yeah. Well, and just to kind of jump ahead, that sort of where you're going with that argument.
No, I'm not. I just was curious.
Well, the other side of it is, my parents whooped me every day, and I turned out just right. I turned out fine.
Yeah, totally.
That kind of thing.
Yeah. No, I turned out great. Are you kidding me?
So we hear that too. It's like, my parents beat me, and I turned out great. I turned out fine.
Yes.
And you're
Besides
thinking,
the welts, it wasn't bad.
Right. You're thinking, did you?
Yeah.
Did you turn out fine?
I just heard they should have spanked you more, and I'm thinking, well, every 15 minutes seemed good enough, but I don't know.
So yeah, that's right. Obviously, it's a reaction to that sort of spanking culture and harsh parenting culture and all that stuff.
Yeah.
But again, I've said this on this podcast before. I am like pathologically moderate. I am middle way guy all the way.
Yeah.
I am obviously either extreme is problematic.
Yes.
Right.
And in so much as therapeutic culture does promote that gentle parenting to an extreme, I would actually agree with her.
Oh, really?
I don't think it always does. In fact, I work with a lot of therapists who work with parents, and most of them, many of them certainly, would agree with her critique.
Okay.
They would say there's something good about talking about being a gentle parent and leaning into empathy and kindness with your kid, and not being harsh.
Yeah,
and there's something good. But taken to an extreme where you're letting the kid hit you in the ear.
Yeah, that's not.
There's something crazy about
you're
that.
teaching them something else, too,
right? You're
by
teaching
not
a thing.
responding. You're not just passive. You're teaching them something.
Right. And I would say when you're letting your kid run around the restaurant and terrorize the entire restaurant, it's this almost narcissistic thing of like, the needs of my kid outweigh the needs of everybody else here.
Yes.
And that's teaching kids something as well.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to go ahead and say, I think a lot of her critique is accurate. I think though she sort of sets up a straw man argument. It's a little bit of a, she cherry picks studies.
And that's kind of what the first book that I read.
You read a similar one
years ago.
Yeah.
And I was like, this seems a little like set up for success for the book.
Right.
Yeah.
And so where I come from is I think there's lots of room to critique therapy and therapeutic culture. I really do.
Mm-hmm.
I'm glad for it. Like when I read something that's like, okay, here are the problems with this, and I can really dig into it and go, yes, yes, yes. I love that.
Yeah.
Because I think it makes my field better.
Right.
But what I would say is in this particular book, which has got a lot of traction, it's really setting up these things as, gentle parenting is this non-limit setting, boundaryless thing. And that's what therapists teach kids.
Right.
Or teach parents. I would say no. Not entirely.
Right. Is the idea behind gentle parenting, just as I've seen it play out, when it doesn't, they're trying to promote some curiosity in the kid. They're trying to give them freedoms that they didn't have. I think it has its place in today's world to foster some creativity, to foster curiosity, to ask questions, to feel their feelings. But when it's left to its own devices, when it's not, we probably don't need to be running around the, and if you don't stop, if there's no consequences for a child for anything, they learn that. And eventually they're going to run into somebody who's going to give them consequences. A boss, a bully.
Well, it's funny you use that example because that's with my kids, because we have two that are grown now and then one that's 12, almost 13.
Yes.
Yeah. So we're kind of in the midst of it.
Look
even
at
with
you
Rocky,
go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But with Journey and Honor, we discipline more traditionally, I think.
Yeah.
Early on, like we spanked, we did, kind of what I learned growing up. But with through that, we also kind of saw, wait a minute, not everything requires this discipline. So we started to get more creative. And you mentioned consequences, and that was a big thing for us why are we disciplining? Well, it's because we want to aim them right, because there's consequences in the real world when they're out there, right? So here's an example. Like Rocky loves video games. We might say, hey, dude, you need to clean your room. But we would give him the option to go, I don't want to clean my room, or to go, I'll clean my room. If he says I don't want to, well, the consequence then might be, well, you're going to go to bed a half hour early. You can choose that consequence. Yeah. Or the consequence, if you do it, might be, we'll give you an extra half hour. So we're allowing him to have a choice in that. Now, that's not a big life altering kind of a thing, but trying to help him see through ways that we discipline. And I don't know if that's what that would be considered,
no, I think it's
gentle type parenting or, but so there's places that we've leaned into, I think maybe both a little bit,
Yeah. Well, you're trying to hit a balance, which seems like the right place to hit.
Yeah.
This is from the moderate on the.
Yeah.
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 Anytime you're helping your kid learn logical and natural consequences as applied to real life, you're probably on the right track.
Yeah.
So you can make this choice, but there's a consequence that follows it.
That's right.
Right. It's there's a psychology principle called the Premack principle, which is, if you want ice cream, then eat your peas.
Yeah.
Eat the Brussels sprouts and then you get your dessert.
Yeah, my mom knew that one.
Yeah.
I could do without Brussels
and
sprouts
so you could,
and peas.
Right, and then you could pass on it and not get the dessert. That's fine.
Which I usually
that's
did.
a choice that you can make.
Right.
So you do the thing that you don't want to do before you get the
thing
payoff.
you're after, yeah.
But there's all kinds of opportunities for kids to learn. If I procrastinate, then I don't get my paper in on time.
Right.
And that, for my kids, I would always say, I've already passed the 10th grade.
Yeah.
It's like, I don't need,
It's
so I'm not
on
going to
you,
step
man.
in and help them
Yeah.
pass the 10th grade or whatever it was.
Right.
If they wanted my help in enough time, they gave me a couple of days notice. Could you help me look over this? I'd be glad to. But if they come up to me and say, I've got a paper due tomorrow.
Good luck.
I'm like, well, going to be a long night.
Oops.
Yeah.
But sucks for you.
There's definitely instances of that where, we know the consequence can be way beyond like a bad grade, and so in those instances we've approached differently, right? So like,
sure.
Don't play in the road, you get hit by a car. We don't want them to learn that the hard way. Right. So I think depending on what it is,
the where it drifts though is that parents now increasingly associate normal things with danger. And I'll give you an example. I was presenting to a group of parents, and I was talking about what are the non-negotiables where you step in. I think they are things related to honesty and safety, right? So if the kid's just lying to you or lying, I think that's something where you're like, we're stepping in on that. Or if it's anything that involves safety, I think also. So afterwards, I had a mom come up to me and say, well, I think that if he doesn't do well in school, that's a safety issue, because then, maybe he doesn't get into a college that he wants to, and then maybe he can't get a job. And all of a sudden she had it down to this, like he's living under a bridge. Because he's not, because he performed well on a test.
Got to see.
And that's the error of this. But I will say there's a little bit of a caricature of gentle parenting in this book and elsewhere. There's a lot of good stuff about this idea of let's draw out, allow a kid to be emotionally intelligent by identifying what they're feeling and expressing that. Let's promote curiosity. Let's promote exploration, right? Let's not be overly harsh and punitive. Great. In broad principle. But what her critique is, where I think it's right, and I do think our profession promotes this sometimes, is this sort of so gentle that limits aren't being set, where a kid's allowed to run around the restaurant or hit the mommy in the head without getting too like, I mean, that's like deal breaker immediately. We're not like, mommy, that hurts mommy when you hit her in the head. It's like we're done. So
unless I get to do it back.
We're gonna edit that part out. Just that part's out.
You hit me, I'm hitting you back.
So a related thing that I'll talk about that's a critique is, and Jonathan Haidt talks about this in his book, The Anxious Generation. Highly recommend that book. Highly recommend. But he talks about this concept of safetyism, which is this overemphasis that parents have on keeping their kids safe.
It's like the helicopter idea.
It is. It's helicoptering. And his premise, by the way, which I agree with, is we're overprotecting kids in the real world and underprotecting them in the digital world. So we're letting kids have, a device at 2 years old and be on Xbox Live when they're 7 and all these things. And all kinds of shenanigans and nonsense that they're getting exposed to. I'm not even talking about the video game. I'm talking about the conversations and the stuff people trying to make contact and all this kind of stuff. That we're underprotecting them in the digital world with social media, et cetera, and overprotecting them
in the
by running interference and trying to keep them from feeling discomfort, trying to keep them from feeling, failing in some way.
It's almost like they're not learning how to be like humans in the world and learning, and it's just this shield that's been around them, and then when they enter into the world, they're like,
Yes, and I do think the bad practice of psychology has contributed to that. I don't think it's the only thing that's contributed to that, but I do think. But I will also argue that most therapists don't fall into this. In other words, they don't try to promote over safetyism of the like they're more about allow your kid to fail. The theme of my profession, of my career, has been resilience. There's no way you can become a resilient person without failing, without skinning your knee, without getting cut from the team, without having a breakup, without all the
hard
things
stuff.
that you need to go through,
without getting a trophy.
And if you think about, now we have parents, and I sound like old man Dave here, but who are running interference even at the college level. They're contacting the dean of students. My son had, strep throat, and that's why he missed the test. Could you, all this stuff. It's like, that's why you go to college, to be an adult where you advocate for yourself. And my daughter's in a room with a girl that she doesn't like, and the other girl comes in late and wakes her up. Can we get a switch of she needs to be taken care of. That's the culture that we're in, where we're trying to keep our kids so
Yeah.
protected and insular that they don't experience discomfort. And so it's not a surprise that we have this increase in anxiety disorders because you don't have any resilience to withstand normal.
Man.
Do you see
stresses
this
and
in
things.
Christian circles?
Oh yeah, of
Okay.
course. Yes.
Okay. So
Yes.
you see this in like okay.
Well, let me ask you.
I'm gonna,
do you?
Well, I'm going to ask this question, and it's not. Is part of this behind the homeschool movement, or part of this behind the isolation? Like I want to pull my kids.
I think so. Yeah.
Okay.
And I will just make
that's
this
a fair
statement.
question.
I'm trying not to
understand how you're being.
Yeah.
I don't think it's a mean question. I think it's just a question.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, here's what I'd say. I actually think this is going to sound super contradictory, but I think that in many ways,
for it.
a kid can actually get a better education in a homeschool environment, potentially,
Sure.
if it's really on point and it's very enriched and all that. So I'm not down on that.
No.
But I think a lot of what drives that is I don't want my kids exposed to certain things or people or ideas,
That's what
and
I'm
I have to
wondering.
pull them around. To me, that feels very much antithetical to the kind of lived-in faith that we're called to. But I'm not saying that across the board no one should be homeschooled. I think there's an educational benefit to it potentially, but I do think, to your deeper point, a lot of what drives it is this safetyism. It's this protection. Let's protect our kids from.
In the gentle parenting arena, right? So the therapist or the person that wrote Bad Therapy, can't remember her name already, but so they would see consequences of bad therapy being gentle parenting. And then
that it would promote that therapy would promote this idea that when a parent comes in, that the message the therapist gives is, say, why are you feeling like that? Or what are you feeling right now? Rather than addressing the behavior of like you're getting hit in the head.
And so would they say it's creeping into mainstream? Is this creeping into, like, I've never taken my kid to therapy, but yet it's
that's her critique.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the experience is that the therapeutic community is affecting the whole in such a way that it's heightening this idea of, I have to protect my kid more. I can't be like, there's a stigma now attached to, I'm going to beat you.
Imagine that.
Yeah.
I think there might have always been, but I know.
Not when I was growing up.
You're right.
But there's a stigma even attached to, I'm going to discipline my kid.
Right.
Well, those are two different statements too.
I know they are, but I'm using extremes here, but there's a degree of, how do I publicly discipline my child without getting the scorn of, like, the
correct.
What do those parents do? Those kids are terrorizing the restaurant. And they're like, okay, I probably should stop this, but then if I do, then I'm going to have a screaming kid that I'm going to have something else I have to deal with.
Or somebody else yelling at me for how I did something wrong.
Right, how I did, or if I, So I think people are kind of caught.
Yeah.
I'm glad I'm not parenting right now.
Right, because that's the point that she's making is that the larger culture is now infected.
Is it confused
by this idea of we're penduluming to another, like it clearly not great to be like harsh and beat your kids, and clearly not good.
Right.
Oh, that's bad.
Yes.
Okay, just to clarify.
I will say that's bad. But we're now over here where it's like,
I agree,
to an extreme, and that critique I think holds up.
Yeah.
I don't want to make myself the hero of this story, but I'll just tell you a example of my own parenting.
Yes.
Which was, I had my then oldest kid, Chris, loved being in the pool. So if we went to vacation, it was like, it could be Disney World, but hotel
The
pool is what's up.
That's hilarious.
And a lot of energy, that child, and would get up. This was maybe, I'm going to say 3 years old, something like that. Would get on the side, jump in, and then I would be in the water and pick Chris up and out of the water, set back on the side. And do it. Well, this went on for about somewhere between 50 and 500 times.
Okay.
You know, it was like never ending.
yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Right. So
Yeah.
I finally said, okay, we're going to do 10 more and then we're done. And so we count them down, 9, you know, and so on.
Yeah.
So I said, all right, this is the last one.
Oh, no.
And jumps in the water, pick up Chris, set on the side, and what does Chris say? More.
Yeah.
One more.
I
And I
know.
said, nope, that's it. And
Oh, boy. The world.
lost
Mind.
Right.
Lost
Just
mind.
The
Yes.
plot, man. It's over.
and just like crying and hysterical and
Yeah.
screaming
Yeah.
and all this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And so I take Chris, set in a one of those pool chairs, you know, drape a
Yeah.
towel, can't be consoled. Everybody's, you know, being disrupted by this. So I literally take the towel and roll Chris up like a burrito.
Yeah.
Put Chris under my arm and march into the hotel lobby and up the elevator with a screaming child.
Yeah.
Sure.
Right? Because I felt like my responsibility at that point was not only set the limit, but also
Yeah.
this is disruptive.
Disruptive.
to
Yeah, these
all
people
Right.
don't
other
need to
humans.
deal with this.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So I feel like there's less of that now, where it's
They would just wrap him like a burrito and leave him there.
or just not, or just, you know,
Just keep doing it.
yeah, allow the kid to just express feelings and all that. So I think we're just talking about a thing that's out of balance, and
Okay.
the critique that she has about therapeutic culture influencing this, I think, is legit.
Okay.
Yeah.
There are a couple other points I want to make.
Yeah,
real
yeah,
quick,
yeah,
If we've got time.
Yeah.
One is that the critique here is that there is a lot of therapy that has questionable efficacy or questionable outcome,
Yeah.
where kids are brought into therapy and the therapist is doing, you know, different things that it's like, oh, well, they're talking about their feelings, they're doing this, but is there any evidence that this is helpful?
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a great critique.
Mm.
I do,
Yeah.
because not all therapy or counseling is the same.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And the movement in what she doesn't say, which is an important, very important omission here, is that the movement in good therapy is toward what we call evidence-based treatment, EBT,
Okay.
evidence-based therapy or evidence-based treatment.
Yep.
Which is, are you doing something that the research has demonstrated has an outcome?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yep.
So
Yep.
there are certain things that are evidence-based therapies, like cognitive behavioral therapy and dialectical behavior therapy and acceptance and commitment therapy and other things like that.
Yeah.
So if you know, and not all, just like not all physicians, not all pastors, not all musicians are of equal competence,
Sure.
equal skill.
Yep.
Same thing's true with therapists.
Yeah.
And so there are a lot of people that, you know, they love kids and they love, you know, and they're good. They've got interpersonal skills and they're fun. And we like to go see Miss So-and-so and all that. It's great. But they might not be doing something that has a demonstrated outcome.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So I actually think that's a really good critique.
Yeah.
And I think as a consumer of therapy, as a parent,
Yeah.
or as just for yourself, you should ask the question: is like, what kind of therapy model do you use? Is there any kind of research behind it?
Yeah.
If so, could you point me to that? I think that's actually really, really good.
Yeah.
Yeah. That sounds just smart.
Yeah.
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 So the critique that some of the stuff that's out there is just, you know, shoddy or questionable.
Mm-hmm.
I'd actually agree
That's
with.
fair enough. Yeah.
I would say it's fair.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
Mhm.
it's, you know, there's no profession where everybody's good.
Nope.
That's right.
And this idea that because someone has a degree or a license in counseling or therapy ensures that they know what they're doing,
Yeah. Not true.
it's
Not at
not
all.
true.
Yeah.
No.
And I will tell you, I know a ton of really, really good therapists who have really good outcomes.
Yeah.
But I'm sure there are lots of
Not so good.
not so good.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
that's true.
Yeah.
So let me pick one more piece of
Yeah.
Go for it.
Let's do it.
So this goes a little broader than the book, but I'm going to, what she's alluded to in the book and also sort of putting out there is how there's kind of this movement to therapize the culture
Yeah.
that you were talking about,
Yep.
where it's kind of this over therapeutic culture.
Mhm.
And there's a significant downsides to that.
Yeah.
And that shows up primarily now in social media.
Yeah.
And so if you go on social media, TikTok or Instagram, I mean, the word gaslighting will appear in every fourth post that you read.
Yep.
Everybody's dad's a narcissist.
Codependent.
Now they're codependent. That's
Right?
old
Like
school.
all
but
the,
yes,
yeah, I mean,
everything's trauma.
Yeah.
Everything's trauma.
Yeah.
You had a breakup. That's trauma.
yep.
You, some bad thing happened to you. That's trauma.
Flat tire. It's trauma.
People are self-diagnosing as having anxiety disorders or ADHD or autism or whatever the self-diagnosis. You'll see stuff about dissociation, which, by the way, I'd never had a client ever know that term or bring it up until 2 years
media.
ago.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And almost always when people truly dissociate, at least at the level of a disorder, there's almost always an abuse that's happened.
Sure.
But people are talking about how they're dissociating it. So here's part of what's happening here is I used to call it the abnormal psychology class phenomenon.
Oh,
Which was, did either of you take abnormal psychology class?
I did not.
I thought every class I.
Wait, that's called seminary.
Oh, yeah, that's right. That's
Good
right.
Lord, I forgot. Okay.
So yeah.
Abnormal psychology
took it.
is.
So yeah,
is-
there's like
is seminary.
There's the
Got it.
general psychology,
Yeah.
and then there's developmental. But abnormal, they used to call it abnormal, sometimes psychopathology.
Oh,
They'd
yeah.
be describing something, and let's say ADHD. ADHD is characterized by trouble keeping your attention focused and
Oh, what'd you say?
difficulty, right?
Yeah.
Your tendency to procrastinate and
Yeah.
harder to all that.
Yeah.
And you're sitting there going, "Oh my gosh,
You
I have
self-diagnosed.
ADHD," because everybody has
Yeah.
some
Some
degree of
of
trouble
version,
with that.
yeah.
Or you talk about social anxiety. It's like overthinking before a social interaction, getting hesitant to put things out there when you're interacting, avoiding certain social, and you're thinking,
Sure.
my gosh, I have social anxiety, right? So that's part of what's happening is that
Right.
when you start seeing a list of symptoms, you might say out of those 7 things, 4 are true of you, but they only might be this much
Right.
true rather than that much true.
And
And-
those of you listening, he was showing it 1 inch apart versus 6 inches apart.
Right. It might be,
Yeah.
So the hint of it might be there.
Yeah.
But like use attention or ADHD.
Yeah.
Yeah.
ADHD is only diagnosed when you have attention problems at the 98th percentile or more.
Oh, wow.
So you might have, let's say if you did a measure of attention and you were at the 90th percentile
Yeah.
for inattention, you don't have ADHD.
You still don't qualify.
But your attention's not great.
Yeah.
It's kind of like,
Yeah, you have a problem.
I mean,
but it's not
maybe
bad.
you got to compensate for it, but it's not great. Well, same thing. Let's use OCD. If you're thinking like, well, when I eat, I have to line up my fork just right, or I can't step on a crack, or I have to. Okay, we call that stuff subclinical, meaning it's a whiff of it, but it's not diagnosable.
Yeah.
So this kind of
Sounds
movement
superstitious.
with what's out there now
Right.
is that there's all this stuff floating in social media, and I know I'm drifting a little off the
No,
boat,
but that's part of it,
where,
though.
where we're kind
Yeah.
of we're making everything a kind of a pathology or therapizing everything,
Right.
and that's not good. It's not good for my profession. It's not good for us.
Well, and all those terms, just like you just mentioned, a ton of them, just willy nilly kind of thrown around like it, and so I think it do such a disservice
Right.
that way.
And I'll use one, and this is gonna move somebody
Okay.
badly. I think some people are going to be.
They
Am
won't
I gonna
like
be
this?
They're not
offended?
going to like it.
Okay.
All right.
But I will say it is true.
Okay.
Is that this idea that everybody's had trauma? I would say is not true. It's like we've all had our own trauma. We've all had. Well, that is such a broad definition of trauma. If you're saying we've all had bad stuff in our life to deal with, we've all had difficult things. I would 100% agree with that.
Yeah.
But the way psychology defines trauma is that it has to be something that is either life-threatening to you or someone else, or violates the integrity of your body, or some overt form of abuse, something like that. There are definitions of what trauma is.
Okay.
So this idea of like, oh, I was in this relationship and, I found out that my boyfriend was cheating and, it was so traumatic. I'm not saying that's good.
That's right.
Or easy.
Or that it didn't hurt
Or that
a
it
lot.
didn't hurt
Yeah,
a lot or
yes.
stick with you 6 months later.
Yes.
But that's not the clinical definition of trauma.
So once we start broadening out, it's this concept creep where everything, right? Once everything's trauma, then of course, well, we're all traumatized, right? Well, that's a dangerous precedent to put out there.
Yeah.
And it also diminishes what we do because there are people that have had very significant trauma.
Right.
By the way, I'm not saying that, let's say someone has a bad breakup, maybe they'd benefit from therapy, but to frame everything as any bad thing that's happened to you, even any really bad thing that's happened to you as trauma, is, I think, unhelpful in ultimate sense.
Yeah.
And also makes this whole thing so like over therapizes the culture. Now, I know some people, you might have another therapist come on here and strongly disagree with me, but I think I could go toe-to-toe with them in a debate.
Maybe we should do that.
I'd love it.
That'd be fun.
And there's something in Nashville, by the way, where when you talk to people, early career people that are coming out of these counseling programs, it feels like 9 out of 10 of them say their specialty is trauma. And I'm like, what is this, Sudan? I mean, this is like the most traumatized city I've ever seen. What is happening? And it's partly because of this, that trauma's now, the concept has gotten so broadened out that now everybody's had trauma. So of course we need all these therapists to deal with everyone's trauma.
Right. Wow. Interesting.
Yeah. So
so that would be an example of how the therapeutic ideas have encroached upon our culture.
Right. And we're pathologizing things that are normal parts of life.
Yeah.
It's normal to have a breakup and to feel bad about it.
Yeah.
It's normal to lose your luggage in the airport and not be able to have it for your vacation.
It sucks.
It sucks.
Where were you last week?
Yeah. It's normal to have a friendship dissolve or to have a major relationship.
These things all hurt real bad.
They're bad.
Yes.
I mean, we're not diminishing that.
Yeah.
That's right.
We're just saying that
it's normal to have your homeowner's insurance give you a hard time.
Yeah.
It's not trauma.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks for clearing that up.
Yeah.
But like a trauma might be if you were in a flood, like in Asheville, and you lost your house and you lost your.
That's trauma.
That's legit trauma, man.
Right.
Yep. Right. Mm-hmm. So that there's a difference there.
Yeah.
And part of the reason why it's important, and I know I'm on my little soapbox, but is because when I first started in this profession, I worked in community mental health, and the majority of my clients were very violent kids, and the vast majority of them had legitimate trauma.
Yeah.
Physical abuse, sexual abuse, major neglect, all kinds of things.
Yeah.
And we were in just the wilderness about how do we treat trauma?
Yeah.
Like, what do we do? Because we were just at a loss.
Sure.
We would do some things that would be helpful. Well, in that span of time, the last 25, 30 years, we know what helps now. But it's because we study trauma with definitions, and then we apply these sorts of methods or modalities to it, and we know what works.
Yeah.
Right. Once you start saying, well, that definition is so broad, then it erodes the whole the whole field.
Yeah.
We don't know why are we applying this sort of methodology that works for someone that's been horribly traumatized to a breakup or something else.
Well, and I think even if you take that out of mental health and into even just like the physically, like the medical field, we don't diagnose something that you don't say this is cancer unless and we have the science to show that's what leads us to that.
Right. If everything's
conclusion.
cancer, then you start operating the same, like everybody comes in with stomach pain and you're going to,
it's just,
it's same, like if you have heart disease, we need to know what heart disease is so that we don't crack open everybody's chest.
Do a lot more damage.
That's the idea.
Interesting.
So the summary for me is I appreciate the book.
Yeah.
I think that she hits on some important points. I also think she caricatures some things and backs it up with cherry-picked research.
Sure.
Yeah.
And I think there's a lot of really, really good therapists and good therapy happening.
Yeah.
But the idea that we've sort of over-therapized the culture and over-therapized childhood and adolescent development and parenting, I think is a good critique.
Right.
That's true.
Rock on.
Yeah.
And I would say on the other end of that spectrum, the church has oversimplified parenting to a formula.
100%.
There you go. That's also the other.
And that's the other extreme. We've oversimplified first time obedience. There's a number of books out there that are just misdirecting parents to be something they're not.
Yeah, I would have even harsher critique.
I would too.
For them.
I would too. Yes, for sure.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Thanks, Dave.
so the church has contributed.
There we go.
You guys all have a great day. Good luck out there.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Journey on My Mind. If you enjoyed it, please help us spread the word by leaving us a review and sharing it on your social media. Journey on My Mind is a production of Journey Church in Brentwood, Tennessee. Edwin Rivera III is the show's producer with technical assistance from Randy Hansen. Grant Opperman edits the show. If you have a suggestion for a future topic or a question, you can text us at 615-861-9503. And if you would like to talk to someone about spiritual or mental health issues, you can email our care pastor, Sam Barnhart, at sam@journeytn.com.